So we've been exploring a couple of ideas in Battletech, looking at some of the functionality of weapons, looking at some of the weapon systems, approaching this is building on reviewing the starter set mechs. So for the new players in there, you're getting used to Battletech, you're figuring out your lance builds, you're putting together your tactics, you're getting ready for that next miniature purchase. I wanted to explain a little bit on the idea of an AC5, 10, and 20, kind of what that number represents, and to help understand it a little bit better in that narrative and on the table. So there's this idea in Battletech, if you read through the lore, and this is what's really interesting, there are various companies building and creating these mechs on there. Sometimes 2 or 3 companies producing the same mech. We see this with Kong Industries across various worlds and across various automated battle mech factories, almost like a car assembly plant. I mean, General Motors is still out there. Ford Motors is still out there, apparently thousands of years into the future. So in exploring that, there's this idea in the narrative, multiple battle mech lines. The subcomponents, the fusion engines, the gyros, the weapons, they are all provided by different contractors and subcontractors. Now, for the most part, based on how a mech is sized and how the internals work, most of these companies will outsource and have a specific type of medium laser or have a specific type of long-range missile pack on there. But just like there are various engines, different engines in a car, we could say, is it a V6? Is it a V8? Is it an inline? And it points to a lot of different builds, but a similar technology. So there's this understanding in Battletech when you see an AC5, an autocannon 5, that represents a wide class of weapons that do 5 points of damage. Some of these autocannons might fire a single slug. Others might fire 3 or 4 in a quick, rapid fire on there. As we move up to an AC-10, again, it could be multiple projectiles. It could be one giant slug, an autocannon 20 with a hunchback in the lore. The idea is it's just firing like essentially this massive cannonball out of there. And if you look at the miniature itself, the hunchback, it's a medium mech, AC-20. I love it. It's one of my favorite mechs. It's got this massive cannon on its shoulder. It's an AC-20. Now look at, either in the tech manuals or the miniatures itself, look at the Cyclops, it's an assault mech, and look at the Atlas. They both have autocannon 20s. But physically on the mech, it's a little bit smaller. I mean, it's still a big gun, but it's a lot smaller compared to the hunchback. And the idea in the lore, if you read those type of configurations, I believe it's an Imperator class, they shoot, the rate of fire is much, much, much higher on there. So it's dealing out 20 points of damage based on an extremely high rate of fire. So it's this very abstract kind of concept in Battletech that it represents a wide group of weapons that are on there. Same way with a medium laser, a large laser, a small laser. It's referring to the size, it's referring to the range, but there's different sizes, there's different configurations on how it works. You can interpret that however you like, in your mind, in the tech manuals, and when you're building your mechs. But on the rules side, it was just easier to be like, hey, here's a gun that does 5 points of damage, here's one that does 10, here's one that does 20. We see that with the missiles, the LRM and the SRM. How many missiles from that pack actually fire? And if you look at a lot of the mechs, I'm trying to think of a mech that has that. If you look at some mechs, they'll have an LRM-5. If you look at the Grasshopper, that's just the first mech that came to mind. We were exploring the Grasshopper a couple of weeks ago. It has a long-range 5-pack on the side of its head on there. If you look at the miniature, it has 5 little missile tubes on there. So the idea is per salvo, it's firing 5. If you look at some of the mechs that have short-range missiles, or the Warrior helicopter that carries a short-range missile pack on there, it only has 1 tube on each side. Well, the idea is it's firing at a higher rate of fire that's out there. So a similar concept exists with the missiles. It's just how much damage does it do?